All right, here we are back. Time to seal this thing. So let's talk about the sealer that we're going to use here. I'm not showing you the brand name on purpose. You're not going to have that brand in your area unless you're located in the same geographic area as me. What you need to take away from this in the world of concrete sealers is that it's a pretty deep world. There's a lot of different concrete sealers. So if you just go into a store and you're like, I need a concrete sealer, they're just going to overwhelm you with information. So let's simplify this. We have used water-based acrylic paints to paint our rock, right? So we are going to use a water-based acrylic concrete sealer. We are going to use a water-based acrylic concrete sealer. Now we're not going to have any compatibility issues guaranteed because it's all the same like material that we're using from beginning to end. So how do you know it's an acrylic water-based concrete sealer? It will say those exact words on the package. It will say water-based, cleans up with soap and water, acrylic concrete sealer. So these are the ways that you know that you've got the right thing. And again, the world's pretty deep of concrete sealers. That's the stuff I like to use. And if you're like, well, I have something else, I have this surface concrete sealer or some other thing, will it work? Probably will work. You could probably use just about anything on this, but I want to show you what I'm most familiar with so I can tell you what you're going to expect in terms of longevity, reapplication, things like this. So I'm using a water-based concrete sealer here. The one I have has a little bit of a gloss finish to it. You'll notice when we're done here, the rock is a little bit glossy. In the world of artificial rock, some people complain about that glossy look. They don't like the glossy look because rocks aren't glossy in nature. They're very matte. And as a result, you might want to pick up a matte concrete sealer. Those are available as well. This really comes down to what you're looking for. Like a lot of the stuff I make is small statuary, and I kind of want a little bit of a sheen on it because it makes it look nicer and it really makes the different color layers pop. But if you are going for a truly realistic creation of a natural stone, maybe choose the matte versus the glossy sealer because I think it's going to give you a more realistic representation of what a natural stone would look like in the environment. That being said, it's really dealer's choice. Whatever you think looks good is the way to go. So applying these sealers, I'm following the directions on the sealer, which says you can do it by brush, roller, or a spray bottle. Small or large. You can big pressurized spray bottles or just a tiny little guy like this. And for this piece, this tiny little guy will do. I'm going to ideally do 2 layers of sealer here with some dry time in between. You don't want to go really heavy with a sealer like this. When you put the sealer on, you'll notice that it has like a purple hue to it. And some people get worried, am I going to change the color? You're not. The purple hue totally goes away. But as you put it on, you don't want to develop like thick pooling or running spots of this purple coloration. Just a little dampness with the acrylic sealer such that on the next pass we'll get the rest of it. You don't get it 100% with a spray bottle like this on each pass, and that's why we're going to do multiple passes. So let's talk about how long you can expect this sealer to last. We could, in theory, not seal this at all. And I mean, you'd have an awfully hard time getting all this paint off of here. Even many years outside probably wouldn't result in much change to what you see here. If we apply the sealer, even as a one-time treatment, you're going to extend the color fastness of this rock 5-7 years, something to that degree. And the sealer goes a really long way to stopping that water permeation on the surface level, as well as kind of blocking some of the damaging UV from the sun. If we reapply this sealer every 2 to 3 years, basically this color fastness becomes indefinite because the sealer will be a protective layer against UV and water permeation and things like that. And aside from physical gouging and scratching, which will obviously mar the paint job here, you're looking at pretty indefinite applications for stones like this. And that includes freezing climates. I live in Ontario, Canada. It gets awfully cold in the winters here. And I've got these guys that sit outside all year long, including a bunch that I have not bothered to reseal in 15 plus years, and they still look good. To give you an idea of a deficiency which you might encounter in such an environment, as this rock ages, it will become a little more porous and it will absorb water. If I experience a flash freeze while this rock is soaking wet, saturated with water, The water will expand when it freezes, and it will cause surface damage like spalling, and it will also cause hairline cracking. Some of the older pieces that I have, you'll upon very close inspection, you note, oh yeah, look, there's like a little crack that runs from top to bottom there. But because of the way that this steel is wrapped around the rock that we made here, it's never going to break apart or move any more than just seeing that structural or that surface level crack. That's really not a structural issue because of the way that it's built. And with the foam inside these, if the foam was removed from these, that would be a different story altogether. I don't think I'd recommend that. I would build it differently if I planned to peel out the foam from the inside. More steel, thicker concrete, things like that. But retaining that styrofoam inside provides a structural element in and of itself. And so, try to crush a piece of styrofoam. You'd have a hard time doing it. So wrap that styrofoam in steel and concrete and now crush it. That's about what we're dealing with here. These things are made to last. So I'm going to get started with the sealing process here. I'm going to do one quick layer, let that dry, and then I'll be back with another layer. So before I get started, I'm just going to go ahead and gear up for safety. Well, that did not go perfectly. My sprayer was failing to give me the fine mist that I was going for and kept just blasting this thing with a laser beam, and that's not ideal. That's not what I was going for. So what you saw there would be a heavy application of a first layer. I considered just stopping here and not going with the second layer because I've already added so much sealer, and it's not a great thing to overload it. But I don't know how well it comes through in the camera, but you can see there's not as a great coloration there, and that's because of the heavy texture pattern and the sprayer that I'm using. Some of it hasn't received sealer yet, like a small, let's say 15% of the rock hasn't received sealer yet, and it results in kind of an uneven coloration, and I can improve that a little bit by doing a second layer. Hopefully the sprayer works with me. It's my last sprayer. I need to pick up more, and ideally you would want to see something a lot finer, more of a light mist as opposed to the heavy direct blast that you were seeing there, and then the purple coloration. And you saw that I was blotting as I was going, which is a really good idea. You have to do it right away. You can't really let it set up and then come back and blot it, because it'll start to get sticky and tacky, and it doesn't work effectively at that point. But if you're quick with your paper towel, take off some of that excess before it starts to run, or especially if it starts to pool on a horizontal surface, that would be bad. Other than that, I think that we could leave it as is, but I'm going to go ahead and try to give it another light layer. Probably end up being too heavy again because the sprayer still sucks, but we'll see how it goes. And here we have our finished product. Lightweight rock made with styrofoam, wrapped with a stucco lath mesh, and then a very thin mortar application, which we did a stamped texture and then a granite paint job. Looks pretty realistic, doesn't it? And that's sitting on the bench here. Put this in some sort of natural environment, surround it with some plants and stuff like that. It looks pretty convincing. Even sounds pretty convincing. There's a lot of plastic, fake rock product on the market, and it looks, I guess, okay if you kind of squint and don't pay a lot of attention, and when you touch it, that's when the illusion really disappears, because plastic is so very recognizable as plastic. And while this is not real stone, concrete does have a lot of similar, properties to stone. You can hear that it's hollow. It's not solid like a real rock would be, but it's also not heavy like a real rock would be. Like this thing, I don't know, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, something like that. It's not a lot. And out of real stone, this would be 300 or 400 pounds. So it's quite a lot lighter, and definitely an interesting technique that you can use to make a lot of different stuff, especially if you're into decorative concrete applications or things like statuary for your yard. You can make a lot of really cool stuff with this technique and process. Would you like to see the rest of it? I was just going to cut away. I'm sure you want to see it. I'll try to get some more high-res shots. This paint job doesn't show well on video. Even low-quality pictures, it's hard to get a good representation of what this looks like in person, because what it looks like in person is very realistic looking. So I'll see if I can't get a small montage of pictures to follow this video here, and you can appreciate just how realistic this looks. I hope you found this information helpful.